Welcome friends, welcome back to Sunday Morning and the Old Cookbook Show. Today we're going to revisit the Mixing Bowl, published by the Ladies' Aid of the Welland County General Hospital, Welland, Ontario, and this is 1930. Welland is a city, or it's now a city, that is down towards Niagara Falls. Maybe an hour and a half to 2 hour drive, depending on traffic, away from where I live. And Welland is one of those cities that in terms of international trade and transport is fairly important because the Welland Canal bisects it. It goes right through it. And the Welland Canal is a shipping channel that if you need to get your boat past Niagara Falls, you have to go through Welland. So if you want to go from the Atlantic Ocean to Chicago or the Atlantic Ocean to Detroit, you've got to go through Welland. And so it brings me to this recipe called tamale pie. And then at the end, I'm also going to contrast the 1930 tamale pie recipe in this Canadian cookbook with the 1930 tamale pie recipe in this community cookbook from Santa Monica, California. Now, the reason I find tamale pie kind of interesting in this book is I was born in 1966. And I remember when my cousins came up to visit for the summer from Arkansas in 1976, they brought with them, and this is going to sound really funny, they brought with them old El Paso taco shells and taco stuff. And as a 10-year-old boy, I was completely blown away because it was totally incomprehensible to me that from the same continent as where I lived, there was this whole world of flavors that I had never tasted before. And I know you're laughing because it's old El Paso. But what I'm trying to say is even into the 1970s and early 1980s, Mexican or Southwest or Tex-Mex wasn't a thing in Toronto. There may have been pockets of it, but it wasn't something that was prevalent. It wasn't a flavor that you could say, hey, let's go down to the restaurant and get it. There may have been one or two in the city, but I certainly had never experienced them. And so I have to imagine in 1930, tamale pie would kind of fall into the same area in Welland, Ontario. So I've started, I've got cornmeal in here, I've put in some cold water, and now I put in some boiling water. And it says to cook this for an hour over a double boiler. So we've reached kind of a loose porridge consistency. I'm going to turn that off. I've got a frying pan coming up to heat, and I'm going to put in a little bit of fat. It says to use suet. I didn't have any suet, so I'm going to use lard. I think lard is fine for this time period and for this recipe. And once that lard has melted, we go in with a diced onion, and we just want to fry that off. It says until it browns. The onion's looking good, so it says now to put in a pound of ground beef or pork. I'm going to use beef, and we fry this off until it's nice and browned. Okay, the meat has browned up nicely. Next in is some tomato, canned tomato, and salt, pepper. And these are to taste, it says. I believe that it says to taste. And then last, and the only real spice in this, is some cayenne pepper to taste. So we'll sprinkle some in. I don't know, Chef John come up with this? Now it says to spread a layer of cornmeal in the bottom of a casserole dish. And so I'm going to say half, because we're going to then put in a layer of the meat. So spread that out. And now the meat goes on top into a layer. And then a last layer of cornmeal. Now, it says to bake it for 45 minutes, but it doesn't say what temperature to bake it at. And there's the timer going off for the cake that I have in the oven. I've got a Meyer lemon cake in the oven. So I'm going to take the cake out and I'm going to stick this in at 350 degrees for about 45 minutes. So stick around for the taste test.
Hello friends, Glenn's tamale pie has been completed. We took it out of the oven a few minutes ago to let it cool, but we have had an intense debate about whether or not it was a bowl or plate.
Is it bowl or plate? Is it fork or spoon?
So we don't really know yet, so we have both ready. So here we go, let's take a look, because it seems like there's still a lot of tomato liquid and other,
Yes.
and yet as you scoop it out, no, I'm gonna say bowl.
Say bowl,
I'm
yeah.
gonna say bowl.
So here's an interesting...
That's a lot more liquid than I expected.
Yes. Well, the Welland version, the one that I made, you put layers in.
Let me actually go get a spoon.
The one from California has a couple of other extra ingredients. It has a can of corn, or kernel corn, garlic, green pepper, and chili powder, and a can of ripe olives.
So a little more flavor to it.
A little more flavor, and you mix it all together instead of having layers. You mix it all together and you put it in a casserole and you stick it in the oven. So they're close. I mean, this one only has chili powder instead of cayenne as an extra flavor. So I'm kind of surprised. And I wonder what, tamale pie is today. Because again, it's not something that is something that I make.
No. Okay, so.
But it looks great. I want some of that too.
It's still hot though, careful. Well, cayenne pepper kind of backfilled to it.
It said cayenne to taste.
Apparently your taste was a lot.
I maybe slipped in a little bit too much. A little bit too much. Okay, so it's an interesting dish. I think if I did this again, I would make the cornmeal mixture a little stiffer to get nice layers. Mm-hmm. Or I'd just go ahead and mix it all together, just stir it all together and put it in the casserole, because I think that would be really good too.
Okay, I'm giggling. I'm giggling because I have this image of...
Oh, not the bibimbap.
Bibimbap, right? Bibimbap. Love bibimbap.
First
but
time.
Glenn likes to eat all of his parts separately. He doesn't like it mixed together.
I don't like it mixed together.
And we were sitting in a restaurant and...
we were in Chicago, in a Korean restaurant in Chicago.
Yeah.
And the
woman the woman who was serving us came over and told Glenn that he was not eating it correctly and gave it a good stir for him.
And she just took it out of my hands and stirred it and then handed it back to me. And I'm like,
he doesn't like it that way.
But I didn't.
So which is why I think it's funny that you're like, I would just stir it all up, because you are not a stirred up all
I'm
up kind of guy sometimes.
Peas, corn, broccoli, everything needs to be separate on the plate. Yes, no, I think in this case I would stir it all together. So I do find this interesting that I do find it interesting that this dish is in this cookbook for this time period, and that really it's not all that different from the one that's in the cookbook from Southern California.
Well, it's that basic cooking is kind of the same no matter where you go, slight variations, right? And the irony is that would be that same, but my family makes the best, but my region makes the best, my region makes the best.
My region.
That subtle difference, right? If anywhere in the world.
And it's also, tamale pie is not a recipe that I've seen in any other community cookbook from Ontario in this time period. So I wonder if it's someone moved,
perhaps,
or someone had relatives somewhere
Ms.
else.
Volz?
Yes. Or is it because of where Welland is, and it had a lot of shipping and a lot of people passing through it.
Yeah, and so more information to share.
More information being shared, which is quite interesting.
Now that being said, if you make a modern version of a tamale pie that you really love,
tell us all about it in the comments section.
Share.
I'd love to know what you make in 2020 as a tamale pie. But I'm going to enjoy eating this, I think, over the next couple of days. So, thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.